All right. Well, thank you, Stephen, and welcome everybody. So the people that I want to introduce are probably some of the most important people in my life and also in our 303 management system. So we've got Emily Plain. Emily, want to give them a wave? And Lauren Hughes and Kaylee Camacho. Kaylee, I'm always struggling with that. But anyway, I love these guys because these are our teaching assistants. These are some of the people that do the real work in the class. One of the things that we found that makes it easier is always having a co-pilot when you're in these Zoom situations. So I've actually got the lucky situation where Wes and I have, 3 co-pilots that are often, in our class. But I'm going to go ahead and get rolling. I know we've got a limited amount of time. So little screen share and present. So one of the things, so we're using Lean to teach Lean. So we're always looking for ways to improve and get better. And at the end of this, we're going to ask you guys to help us out with our Lean learning journey and see if you come up with any ways that we can get better on this. This is just some of the basic, boring course info. I thought I'd sort of put this in because maybe there's some sort of expectations. If you're in a college course, you should sort of know, how this sort of fits into the normal sort of college curriculum place. So, we first started doing this around 2013. So we've been in this game for a while. We do it hybrid. We have 40 students in class, 40 students online. In non-COVID times. During COVID, we put 100% of the folks online. It's a flipped class where students are accessing 80 hours of online material from our partner, More Steam. And then we do 40 hours of live fun stuff in a 10-week quarter in the class. Every student, all 80, have to do a mini project where they apply 10 tools to some process or problem in the real world. So hopefully this class is also helping the world get better or more lean. We've got a 3-hour exam that students can take. They have to take it for this class, but if they get 80% or better, they have the potential to proceed on and do a qualifying additional project for Cal Poly Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification, right? We do about 80 students a quarter. That's 320 students a year getting juiced up about Lean. You can see the support here. So Wes and I are the instructors for the course, and then we usually use about 2.5 teaching assistants. The 2.5 means we got 2 teaching assistants usually attending our Zoom sessions or in class with us. And then there's always somebody in the back room helping us do the grading and catching up on things. It's a sophomore junior level course, and this is the first, actually we're 2 courses deep at Cal Poly. So this is our beginning class, and then we've got an advanced class for folks that want to go further. This is also an option. All business students in the Cal Poly College of Business can take this course as their technology management requirement. Let's see, let me go ahead and move on here. So how do we think about Lean? So the simple version of how we think about Lean is shown here on a slide: value, process, and people. I've also got on my little wall in the back, in case I forget about this at any point in time. But the value that we're trying to deliver in this class is we're trying to generate the first generation of university educated Lean leaders. Okay, so if you're old like me, you learn your Lean stuff and continuous improvement stuff on the streets. These guys are actually getting it as part of their university education. The process that we're going to talk about here is this quarter-long course that we're all involved in delivering. And then, the people are the students, teaching assistants, and instructors that make this all work. Now, so this is the way you think about it. And as I was getting ready for this presentation, I'm also listening to Jeffrey Liker's second edition on the Toyota Way, which has some really cool updates. So I'm re-listening to that, and I was sort of struck by maybe a way of thinking about this course and our approach that's real similar to what he describes in the Toyota way. So if you think about Toyota in the post-war period, and the context that they used to come up with lean, right? So they had shortage of capital, limited amount of demand production. That demand that was there was mixed, limited amount of raw materials. And so out of that, they thought their way to driving the Toyota production system. Well, at Cal Poly, we've got, and in universities, we've got a little bit different context, right? We've got students who have never been in industry. They don't know a lot of times why lean is such a significant paradigm sort of approach. We have to fit into a university curriculum, so we have to deliver this stuff in 2-hour chunks, twice a week, 2 hours over 10 weeks. We can't put them all in a workshop and make this happen. And there's other sort of logistical sort of system context things that makes it hard to apply lean in a classroom setting. And so we're always sort of thinking this is, okay, we can't just cookie cutter what Toyota did. We have to, think for ourselves and think, okay, what's the best way to deliver value within our process context using the people that we have to make this happen, okay? So now I'm going to turn it over to Wes. Wes, you want to talk a little bit about sort of the Shingo model and sort of how this integrates into the class?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you all coming and hanging out with us for a bit. One of the things that Eric and I were very staunch on as we continue to build this course is understanding the kind of the balance of how to implement a lean system, that it's not simply just putting a bunch of tools in a workplace and calling it good, but really having some guiding principles around it. And what better guiding principles to teach and follow than that of the Shingo organization, which for those of you who don't know, but in this room, I can't imagine that would be anyone. But if you win the Shingo Prize, essentially it's like the Nobel Peace Prize for operational excellence. It's a really big deal. And they go in and they really, what they go to assess is not how proficient your people are at lean tools, but how embedded that is in your culture and how embedded problem solving and leader-centered work and all those things are embedded in your culture. And so once a week, we go through and we teach each one of these principles and what those mean in the workplace and how do you engage folks. And it's just something that we'll get into a little bit later in the presentation about thinking systemically, which is one of the guiding principles that we'll talk about. But it's this idea of how do you build and enable a culture of problem solving. And we're teaching that to future lean leaders so that when they go out in the real world, they're not just equipped with a bunch of tools, but also how to implement those things.
Okay, thanks, Wes. And it matches up with our idea, you think about that value, process, people sort of thing. To get a little bit more specific about some of the underlying principles, we're not saying that Shingo has the only principles that we apply in this class, but they have a pretty good set that allows us to sort of think through these things. So with that, now we've got, I'm going to turn it over to Emily. Emily, tell us a little bit about, and we're going to walk through how we sort of apply each one of these principles, or at least artifacts or examples of what this looks like.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Olsen and Wes, for inviting us here today. So for our first Shingo principle that we'll cover, we have respect for people. So little overview for those of you who may not know. So we found that when students feel respected, they give far more than just the bare minimum, but they give their full effort in their assignments, their classwork, and just in the classroom environment in general. So students are energized when they feel respected, and most of them actually tell us that to be respected is one of the most important things that they want from their involvement in a class or organization on campus. In our specific Lean Six Sigma class, we actually embed this principle, respect for students, by not taking attendance. This may seem odd at first, but this is our way of allowing students to take ownership of their learning and be responsible for what they decide to dedicate their time to. So we respect their choices and understand that sometimes things come up. And in the visual below, you'll see that we do record the number of students that attend each class and graph it over the entire quarter. You can see it inevitably does fizzle out in that left bottom left-hand corner, but there are no repercussions for this decrease in attendance because we trust that students are spending that time in a way that serves them best, and we respect that decision. So that is our first principle. Moving on to our next, we have lead with humility. So an overview, humility is, in our eyes, an enabling principle that precedes learning and improvement at the core. A leader or a teacher or student assistant's willingness to seek input, listen carefully, and continuously learn creates an environment where students feel respected, connecting it to the first principle, and energized. We believe that improvement is only possible when leaders are willing to acknowledge their vulnerability and seek to improve. We incorporate this into our class by providing students with a check sheet, as you see on this slide, where they're not only welcome to input issues that they come across involving the course, but they're actually given credit, engagement credit for those wonderful insights. So as you can see, we have them identify the problem and then go back to finding what they think the root cause is and proposing a countermeasure to try and fix this issue. And then at the start of each class meeting, we have a full team huddle with professors, student assistants, and all the students in the class, where we go through all of the ideas written on the check sheet and make sure that those improvements are being implemented. So even though professors, Dr. Olsen, Love, and the student assistants like myself have taught and helped teach this course numerous times, we humbly acknowledge that we make plenty of mistakes, and having those fresh eyes and new perspectives in the course allow for ongoing continuous improvement that we simply wouldn't be able to capture on our own. Moving right along to our third principle, we've got quality at the source. So the idea behind this one is that perfect quality can only be achieved when every element of work or project is done right that first time. If an error should occur, it needs to be detected and corrected as close to the point of time of its creation as possible. So we embed this concept through our entire course by setting aside time at the start of each week for students to share their Greenbelt stories in what we call the breakout room exercise. And then we transfer to the whole class in order to allow students to get that feedback and catch the errors and make those necessary improvements to their project as they arise each week. So this standard work embedded in the course essentially builds in weekly quality checks throughout the entire quarter so that students know exactly what is expected of them and can turn in their best work at the end of the quarter.
So it speaks to, a major element of course where these students are doing these mini projects that cover throughout the course. And every week we do this little sort of check-in sort of exercise to make sure that, things are going well. And because we got 80 students, we can't necessarily talk to everyone and look at everyone, but they can talk to each other. So we're using the resources and the people doing the work to help us improve the work. All right, now I'm going to switch it over to Lauren. Lauren, take it away.
Thank you. The next principle is improved flow and pull. And we apply that in this class by pulling in lean celebrities from all over to share insights on lean in the real world. So lean celebrities are anyone who have applied lean and have experience with using it in their workplace or even at home. And they come into class and talk in an interview style about their journey with lean, what projects they've worked on, and any tips they have for students. And they wrap up with a Q&A with the students. And these all get recorded and put onto the Central Coast Lean website so that there's a library of videos that you can draw from for inspiration and advice. The next principle is seek perfection. And in this class, that's applied by showing the current students the previous students' best projects. They are easily accessible in the Canvas page, so students can look at what was the previous best, and then they're challenged to keep raising that bar and get to the next level. They have the examples on here of their reports and posters, so you can learn from them and see what was the best previously and what you want to take from that. And then there's also a rubric that's been annotated so that students can see what was the best and what the grader had to say about that, so they can really take the most value from those previous examples. The next principle is to embrace scientific thinking.
Sorry.
No worries. Students use this because they're required to use statistical analysis in their mini projects. And they not only use scientific thinking in applying those statistical tools, but also in determining which tools they have to, and which tools they choose to use. They have to analyze which one they're going to use, explain why, and then afterwards interpret it as well. So you get the full circle around that tool. I'll pass it on to Kaylee.
Hello, everybody. So the next Shingo principle is focus on the process. So rather than putting all the pressure and expectations on the students alone to master these concepts, we see this course as a process that could be optimized to guide students towards excellence. Just like you can't blame an operator for a bad process, you can't blame a student for a poorly run course. Thus, we organize this course in a way that effort in leads to mastery out. One of the main ways we do this is by establishing a regular rhythm within the weekly process. Thus, students know exactly what they are going to expect going into class and have a clear idea of what they need to do going out. So each Tuesday, we have a movie day where we watch the movie and we discuss in the team together to kind of master these concepts. And then on Thursday, we have the class huddle. We kind of talk about our mini projects, and we usually go over the Shingo principles and kind of talk through what we learned in more STEAM. So we set this regular pattern within our slide deck to just kind of guide students through the class. And lastly, on Sunday is the day where all the assignments are due. So students know going into the weekend that they can check the student portal to look at which assignments are due. And so by organizing the class in this way, students have much more access and ease going into what they need to do.
All right. So one of my favorite things is teaching systems thinking, or how to think systematically. And one of the points of emphasis that we really make in this class, because the students do get inundated with a ton of tools, as I alluded to before. But what we really try to do is we try to balance those three sort of pillars in any organization of people, process, and tools. And so we extrapolate out what the tool is trying to teach you, but also how that impacts the system as a whole. And that's how we start to introduce this concept of systems thinking and looking at all of the pieces, not just the thing that's in the textbook or the thing that's on your screen. And we highlight during each one of the lessons about how this can impact people, process, and tools. So how, this particular tool that you're using in this particular problem solving methodology, how is it that you engage people? Because I believe it was in 2019, we were doing a higher ed conference, and one of the main things that folks really brought up as the biggest struggle when it comes to implementing this is this idea of change management and culture. How do I embed this, and how do I handle the people side of things? Because the tools are very not simplistic. They are the most tangible and easy thing to grasp onto, but getting folks to actually adopt and engage really gets down to this cultural element. And so that's why we try to embed this idea of people, process, and tools into our learning, because we understand that these folks are going to be charged and maybe go out and be a part of a team, or in some cases lead teams. And one of the things they're going to have to do that is learn how to engage people, particularly people who are doing the work, since they are the subject matter experts, in going into the problem solving methodologies, not just looking at implementing a tool, but implementing a culture that really enables and drives those tools to get the results that people want to see. Next slide. And this idea of creating a constancy of purpose, one thing that we habitually harp on throughout the entire class is talking about this idea that this is about mastery of concepts, not getting a good grade. And really what we're trying to do there is draw this idea of focusing on not the result, but really the behaviors that lead to the result. Because we believe that if students are equipped and they are disciplined in their studies and they follow along the program, they understand the conditions of satisfaction and they work diligently towards those, that the grade will come. This is the same methodology that we would love to see organizations have, where they don't look at that end result and think that the ends justify the means. And if we're getting the results we want, then does it really matter how we're getting them? Really, we want students that look at the why and the how, not just what the outcome is. And the way that we reinforce that principle in the class is say, don't look at the grade. Let's look at all the things that we put in place for you. You know, let's look at the system as a whole. If there's opportunities to improve it, great. But the idea is managing these concepts and understanding not just principally what it's trying to say, but also strategically how you can implement it and tactically how you involve everybody.
Okay.
And last is creating value for the customer. So another thing that we really try to infuse into the class is ideas of balancing this results versus effort. And so what we really try to encourage is we say, hey, since you have to do a mini project for your final project, do something that is that you can put on your resume and say, hey, when I was in my studies, I also did this improvement, and here's how this was executed, and something that's going to be kind of that spark or that thing that's going to get their resume moved to the top of the pile versus just being part of the fray. And so what we really try to do is create value for our customers, in this case, the students, by giving them a project that's going to have impacts not just on this class, but also on their ability to get hired when they leave Cal Poly. And also, as Eric alluded to in the very beginning, making the world a better place, because that's something that we fervently believe that Lean does, is it makes the world less wasteful, and it focuses people on working on things that are value added. And it also gives the students a little bit of insight of what does good feel like when I've completed a project, when I've seen something, from identifying a problem to collecting the current state, to analyzing that, to implementing improvements and piloting and making small adjustments on the back end. It gives the students this idea of like, this is how work could be, that it's not just the summation of tasks I do in a day. I walk in and I answer the phone and I answer my emails and I go to these meetings and then I fill out the spreadsheet and that's my job. Like, those are tasks that definitely need to get done, but that your job is trying to figure out how to do all those things better. And that's really what we're trying to do. And so when we talk about creating value for them, it's giving them that leg up and creating that little bit of extra value so that they have something they can put on their resume, but also some energy and some momentum that they can bring in going forward for the rest of their career at Cal Poly and beyond.
Okay, so, you know, that's kind of all we have. And it was great to hear, you know, Emily, Lauren, and Kaylee sort of talk about this, and Wes. We think about these things as we go ahead and deliver this class. We're always trying to think, okay, well, how can we do this better, how this works? And for those of you who think that, you know, back in 2013, this just sort of popped out of the box, just like you see it presented here, that is definitely sort of not the case. This has been an ongoing series of experiments and learning and incorporations of the ideas of some of the people that you see here on the screen, and certainly ideas that our students contribute. One of the things that we do at the end of every quarter is we do essentially a roses and onions session, or a post operations analysis of sort of what went well and not so well in the class. And what we hear is, you know, we take those to heart. We talk about them later and say, well, how can we incorporate that into our class? So with that, what I want to do is I want to stop now. I've got an idea for maybe some breakout sessions to discuss this further. But before I do that, I would like to maybe hear if there are any questions, and I'm going to do stop share because this is sometimes slides are more a distraction than a help. But who has some questions before we do a little bit of breakout and ask you guys for some suggestions and ideas on how we might improve this or make this better? So are there any questions?